Photography for me is something that shows a perspective on an image or an object or something like that. Just one direction of looking at something.
Oh, is that it?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. So, I have mentioned before that I'm a little bit crazy, and just from listening to you speak and looking at this image, I know that you two are among the crazier people here in Hong Kong. So the photograph is on a sort of a flat space in Hong Kong trails. The, say, 1/3 of the photo is just sort of the exposed trail ground where you can see some roots, a little bit of these wooden, rock steps that have been carved out or placed. And then you're seated, I guess you're giving water to your dogs. And around you is this really nice, it's not the full-on lush green of the Hong Kong trail. This is more like, I don't know, autumn, maybe even winter foliage in the background. And you have leaning, like looking over your left shoulder, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 dogs with you. All of them are off lead, I assume. They seem to be well behaved. So what's this image, you crazy lunatic, you?
Yeah, well, I love dogs and been brought up on a farm, having animals around and farm dogs, always had dogs around. And in this photo at the time, the one closest to me is actually a foster dog that we had, because we ended up helping people, let's say, with wayward dogs. And he was a bit big and aggressive. And after a year, though, he's become, he went from being a foster dog to our dog, and he's been with us 2.5 years now. So Salvador is actually lying on the floor right next to me as we are doing this interview. Oh. He's got down to 32 kilograms now. And there's 2 other dogs actually in this room that I'm sitting in doing the recording. So love dogs being around. So the other dogs, we look after dogs for people when they get caught short with travel or things like that. Oh, nice. And so a couple of them are there. And then there's another one, a kind of a black dog with kind of like a few tan spots. Trident, he was a foster dog that we managed to home here in Mui Wo. And we used to live next to his new home. He thought it was great. So I'd walk past and you hear this kind of kind of weird dog noise coming from, and he's there at the gate waggling. So you open the gate, WhatsApp the owners and saying, "Dog's coming with us," and off he comes for a walk.
Oh, sweet.
And the others were 2 other friends' dogs that are saying, "Hey, you're going for a walk? Can you take him for a walk?" So quickly, I think I've managed to work out the 6 dogs in that photo. But we're just sitting up on between Nam Shan, which is the saddle when you're driving between Mui Wo to Puyo. There's a track that comes around the ridges and goes back over towards Chima Wan.
Yeah.
And the trees in the background are a reminder too that this is an area that's been reforested, because Hong Kong trees were basically all chopped down during the wars, and not very, very little part of the bush that's actually native trees in the sense that older growth ones. Yeah. And it's only a few feng shui woodlands. And so in this spot, you're actually now starting to see what are gum trees or acacia trees in the background in this area, that the AFCD is now thinning out and allowing the native plants to come back up through. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of an interesting background. And what I love about the stone steps is there's things here called boulder paths, which are 200, 300, 400-year-old trails, the old road routes. We just got a little conversation happening in the background that someone's sniffing the dog food and someone else is getting a bit upset. So, Salvador, can you go back to sleep, please? Ernie, get your head out of the dog food. No, hey, stop it. This is not what we're doing over the food. Sit down. Thank you. Right. Now, this is the part about best behaved most of the time, just like humans. There's moments where we get to and we say, I've had enough of you and I'm going to just give you a little niggle. So, hey, both of you sit down. So it's all good. We're going to have fun here. Thank you. Yes. Right, so give them both a bit of loving attention.
And that was awesome.
Okay.
That was like right on cue. Oh, my goodness. How did they know?
I know, this is the world. It's a perspective. See, we're thinking about the world from a certain sets of vibes, channels, energy. I don't get this stuff at all, but I just know there's some other interwebs,
Sure.
you might say, that
Sure.
we are definitely part of. And it's like, don't get upset with them.
That's
Just
hilarious.
say to them, is that the behavior you want, guys?
That's
and
great.
they both agreed no. And one of them's kind of gone and sat down in the corner looking back going, I shouldn't have done that.
Hats off to you, though, because, I realize that you're performing. Like, the mics are on and this is great. This is really just, handled like a professional. Well done, sir. Well done.
Well, credits to, you might say, Mr. Phil Whelan for putting up with me for the last, it's about 8 years that I've been doing interviews with him on RTHK for Morning Brew. And a lot of fun. Like you say, every time a recording is never going to be your best performance, but it's good practice for the next recording.
Wow.
And you get that happening. So up on the hill where these boulder paths are, these really old stone trails, the cool thing is the government here is often criticised for concreting paths. In the last couple of years, they've sent people off to be trained again on doing stonework to build paths.
Yep,
and they're
I've seen it.
repairing the trails with it. And they're using wood as well as stones. And you're just going, oh my goodness, I don't know if they know how excited some people are for this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure others are complaining, saying, why are they still putting stones here rather than
Right.
concrete? You're just going, it is so cool that they're doing this on our really busy trails.
Yeah.
And that's what I enjoy walking. So take the dogs out for a spin in that place. It's about an 8K loop that we can do the back of the hills around here, which brings you back around the waterfront. And possibly that's a good position that you're coming into Moiwo Bay, that you've got the like the helicopter pad and things like that at the ferry pier. So you come back into the town. But it's a good mix because I get to go up some old boulder steps, through some reasonably nice regrowth forest, plantations, back out through a cemetery, down through a view out across the bay towards Chung Chau and Chimawan. And then you turn the corner and you start seeing all of the massive buildings back in central TST side. And then just to bring you back into reality, it's highly likely you walk around the corner and there's a water buffalo blocking your path.
Yeah,
it's that kind of walk.
Yeah, Lantau Island for me. I've lived on Lantau. It's such a magical place. I think it's also really interesting that things like this podcast, right? So Hong Kong is one of these really interesting places that it's always been a kind of a place of transition and a conduit, right? Where you have change in terms of either commercial change or commercial movement or cultural exchange. It's a really unique place for that. And right now, with the pandemic and before that, with the protests and before that, like there's always this kind of change and upheaval and renewal and all this business. And what's kind of interesting is that this podcast and other recordings are capturing a little portrait, right, of this time. And what's really interesting in what you bring to it and your attention and consciousness is that you're this guy from New Zealand who's spent a lot of time looking at the solid landscape, the anchored landscape, right? Like, so for example, the fact that you notice things like these, like the boulder trails, the boulder placements, you're also speaking about it through the filter and the lens of somebody who has done things like surveying and reading the landscape in terms of so you've got the trees and you've got the fauna and everything, but that's all kind of shifting and growing and whatever very quickly on top of this more stable kind of platform or rock or whatever. So timescales
are really important.
Yeah. So it's quite fascinating to have your interpretation and your brain and the awareness, for example, of, because you're around dogs so much and because I'm around dogs so much, I am quite conscious of how their perception and understanding of reading the environment and the world is so different than how we see the world, right? And so you have these 5 Hong Kong special type dogs, right? Just they're mongrels. They're like mixed breeds.
I think all those animals in the photo are all, very special combinations. None of them are close to looking like a pedigree anything.
Yeah. So it's, for somebody who hasn't been to this part of the world, they might just be like, yeah, well, okay, it sounds kind of interesting and exotic, but what would you say to somebody from New Zealand? And it's really funny because just in the I didn't know you were going to be on this episode, but in the previous episode, I was just like, let's pick on somebody. Let's pick on somebody from New Zealand. And I was just like, no, let's not pick on somebody from New Zealand. And here you are, you're from New Zealand, so I can pick on you. So it's a very, very nice of you to join. But how do you overlay your growing up and your understanding of the world to now walking through these trails? So the setting is quite different. So how do you connect those? How do you create a bridge between those two experiences?
Well, it's saved by the cows on the path here or the water buffalo, because I mean, that's just totally crazy. Being brought up in a country where we put all the cows in paddocks and kept them in paddocks and moved them around. You come to Hong Kong and you go, those cows roaming free? I mean, just that's like, I kind of get that in India or those places, but Hong Kong. So it's that kind of amazing variety that Hong Kong has. And I think worthwhile pausing on that timescale thing, because you're talking about the energy of Hong Kong and that. We're brought up on craters here. It's volcanic. It's all volcanic. The 9 pins and out of the Geo Park in the eastern corner. Incredible geology out there. Massive meter round hexagonal columns that are ash flow from volcano, not the lava. The ash that's come out of a massive volcano, and then it's formed up to make these pillars. And you're just going back to the first part, like, hang on, didn't this boy say he's brought up on a place that sunk 2 meters, and it's shaking most days, and things puff and blow and wiggle, and you've got that part. But it's a credit to my time in Australia, where you go traveling and you say to someone, "What does this Aboriginal place name mean?" And it says, "Oh, the boiling mud river." That flowed underground, and you kind of go,
oh, wow.
And we're off to see some lava caves that are now hollow lava caves.
Yeah.
And you go, yeah, I get that they've been here 60,000, 80,000, whatever number, insert their years, because the freaking place is named after how it was.
Right.
And it's kind of like, you're just going, yep, okay, they know this place. And that's where then I bring in the land surveying part and my deep dive into GPS. I never knew that there's things called earth tides. There's things that we know there's like ocean tides. But when we were monitoring for sea level movement, we're having to adjust for the weight of the ice still coming off and the rebound of parts of Europe. Because the ice has melted enough that the ground is still springing back at a millimeter or two a year. And you're going... So each day, with the moon and us spinning, the solid ground is going up and down. And then you go, we're just this, you might say the skim milk on the top of the hot soya milk that's bubbling away underneath. And we're just this little bit of skin on the top that we call hard, that's moving and shaking and that. And that's the interesting part of the science coming in. So when you look at this landscape of Hong Kong, you're going, wow. It was just like yesterday out at Po Toi Island, looking back at Beaufort going, there's very low trees on that. There's hard rock. How many hundreds of years has that been like that? Because I don't believe that there would have been big trees there. And then you go to a place, and for those of you who used to travel to the airport or know Hong Kong airport in the new spot, out of the Caribbean coast, one of the tower blocks there, or the building states, there's like 8 or 10 really tall towers. And in the middle, or to one side, there's one of them missing. That's because the ground beneath it is just so open with hollow caverns and that they couldn't build the foundations there.
I didn't know
And
that.
you're just left going, wow, as a surveyor, when someone buys a block of land, you're normally allowed to do some kind of geotechnical work and understanding. A lot of the land sold here in Hong Kong, they don't get much investigation of the land. So you buy it kind of unknowing what's under the bonnet. and all of this fun of how the property development happens and the interaction with wildlife is keeping me here. But there's one part of the story is like we've missed, and that is, so when we sold the franchise for the team building personality profiling, it was one of those periods saying, okay, maybe I should have spoken some more Cantonese. Maybe I should have known a little bit more about that cultural side. Am I going to put the effort into that? Or am I going to put the effort into stuff that really excites me? So as I said, not excited by languages, really. I just need to know how to get food, how to say something nice to someone, and the rest can do with sign language, you might say. Sure. And so we're pondering, right, where are we going to go now that we've sold the business? Now, the instantly was like, where are we going to go? And then it's like, well, when we get to there, what are we going to do there? Mm-hmm. My wife and I kind of had a couple of weeks of kind of going, yeah, what do we want to do? What is it about? And where we settled on, and why we're still in Hong Kong, is that I looked at it, and there's such a big companies and trading going on in Hong Kong that if I can have a couple of minutes time with a couple of CEOs and change their mindset, the impact globally from being based in Hong Kong is way more than I could be in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. And that's where we decided to stay here, because part of the sourcing next to the manufacturing, most of the, in quote, crap that's sent to New Zealand that we choose to buy because it's short-term buying, purchasing that we know the world's going through, which puts the crap on the beaches, mm-hmm. is that I can probably do more from being in Hong Kong to keep beaches in New Zealand clean than if I went back to New Zealand and tried to change the mindset of the people purchasing things in New Zealand. And that left us with this fun position that I've been lucky enough, after working for Friends of the Earth for 4 years, doing environmental things around roadside air pollution and food waste, that I got involved with corporates here. And one of the projects I've done with the Purpose business is working with Jardine Matheson, looking at some of their waste strategies. Now, wow. Jardine Matheson, for a few people, might know the name, but not many of the companies. They have property, they have car, they have construction, they have food chains, like that. And across Asia, they employ around 400 to 420,000 people, I think it is. Mm-hmm. And you then sit in at the boardroom hearing that and you go, New Zealand capital, Wellington, greater population of Wellington, 400,000. Right. I'm now talking to the boss of who controls the whole of a city that I thought was big. Yeah. And you're kind of going, now there's a chance for change.
Right. I think I could talk to you for days. But
and you gather that I could talk for those days plus some.
But look, but I think what I love is because you clearly have done this before, and you are, you're comfortable with a mic in your face, and you know how to express yourself well. And I like that you've seeded, you know how to seed your speech with things that we can pick up later. So, for example, you said wanted to do a deep dive. And I don't know if that's you being kind of cheeky about seeding for the next photo, because that was a great segue. That I'm going to move us along to go to the next photo, and then see where we end up from there. So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.